Gone with the Wind is a cinematic miracle, yet behind the scenes, a haunting legacy remained. From Clark Gable's hidden struggles to the tragic end of Vivien Leigh, most fans have no idea what truly happened once the red dust settled. Today we pay tribute to these lost legends, revealing their incredible transformations and the heartbreaking stories you never saw on the silver screen. You won't believe how they changed. Clark Gable as Rhett Butler. Born on February 1st, 1901 in Cadiz, Ohio, the actor first built his reputation as a rugged leading man before stepping into his most legendary film, Gone with the Wind. At the age of 38, Gable's portrayal of the dashing, cynical, and ultimately romantic rogue Rhett Butler became a monumental cultural touchstone, offering a silver screen depiction of charm and defiance that captivated audiences worldwide. Delivering cinema's most famous line, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn," his magnetic screen presence defined a character that remains one of film history's most iconic figures. Despite the character's supreme confidence and arrogant bravado, Clark Gable was deeply self-conscious, grounded, and described by peers as far more insecure than the fearless Rhett Butler. This contrast was a significant part of his personal journey. He initially resisted the deliberately challenging role, terrified he could not live up to the public's massive expectations. His career was also marked by profound struggles and professional hardships. Following the tragic death of his wife, Carole Lombard, in a 1942 plane crash, a devastated Gable abandoned Hollywood for years to serve in the Army Air Forces. Upon his return, he faced the difficulty of aging out of his traditional leading man roles and struggled to find work that matched his earlier successes in an industry rapidly shifting toward television and method acting. This culminated in a professional sting in 1954, when MGM unceremoniously dropped his contract after 23 years, a disheartening blow to the man once dubbed the King of Hollywood. Clark Gable continued to work in film as an independent actor throughout the late 1950s, marrying his fifth wife, Kay Williams, and eventually taking on a physically demanding role as an aging cowboy in 1960's The Misfits, alongside Marilyn Monroe. Gable passed away at Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital in Los Angeles, California, on November 16, 1960, at the age of 59, from a massive heart attack coronary thrombosis just days after finishing the film. His death was followed by a deeply poignant aftermath. His wife was pregnant at the time, meaning Gable never got to meet his only son, John Clark Gable, who was born 4 months after he died. He was ultimately laid to rest beside his great love, Carole Lombard, at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, marking a bittersweet closure to a legendary life. Vivien Leigh as Scarlett O'Hara. Born on November 5, 1913 in Darjeeling, British India, the captivating actress first brought Scarlett to life in the 1939 cinematic masterpiece, Gone with the Wind. At the age of 25, Leigh's portrayal of the fierce, manipulative, and relentlessly resilient Southern belle became a defining cultural touchstone of Hollywood's golden age. Her performance earned her the Academy Award for Best Actress and cemented Scarlett O'Hara as one of the greatest and most iconic characters in motion picture history, embodying a complicated vision of survival and romantic tragedy. Despite the character's famously indomitable spirit and iron-willed survival instincts, Vivien Leigh's real life was marked by fragility and intense internal struggles. While Scarlett was ruthlessly thick-skinned, Leigh was highly sensitive and suffered profoundly from severe bipolar disorder, a condition that was poorly understood at the time and caused her significant personal turbulence. She also fought chronic professional hardships due to recurring bouts of tuberculosis, which frequently interrupted her career and forced her to abruptly withdraw from stage and screen projects. Furthermore, Leigh often felt that her extraordinary physical beauty led critics and directors to underestimate her talents, causing her to constantly fight to be taken seriously as a classical actress rather than being pigeonholed as just a glamorous movie star. Vivien Leigh continued to achieve monumental success, despite her health battles, notably winning a second Academy Award for her searing portrayal of Blanche DuBois in the 1951 film adaptation of A Streetcar Named Desire. Her physical and mental health issues, however, deeply affected her personal life, and her high-profile marriage to actor Laurence Olivier, which ultimately ended in divorce in 1960. She remained dedicated to her craft in her later years, appearing in a few final stage productions and films, such as Ship of Fools, 1965, though her ability to work was heavily restricted by her illness. Vivien Leigh passed away at her home in London on July 8, 1967, at the age of 53, from a severe recurrence of tuberculosis. Following her tragic death, the marquee lights of every theater in London's West End were darkened for an hour, in a solemn tribute to her monumental legacy. Thomas Mitchell as Gerald O'Hara. Born on July 11, 1892, the Elizabeth, New Jersey native first brought Gerald O'Hara to life in the sweeping cinematic masterpiece, Gone with the Wind, 1939. At the age of 46, Mitchell's portrayal of the fiercely proud, land-loving Irish immigrant who instills a passionate devotion for the Tara plantation in his daughter Scarlett became a cultural touchstone. His powerful performance, which captured both the boisterous vitality of the antebellum South and the tragic heartbreak of a man broken by war, helped define a character that remains one of early cinema's most memorable and significant figures. Despite the character's bombastic, hot-tempered, and unrefined nature, Thomas Mitchell was an intensely intellectual and sophisticated man of letters. Described by peers as a brilliant playwright and soft-spoken stage director, he was the polar opposite of the blustering figures he often portrayed. This contrast was a significant part of his personal journey. He initially viewed movie acting with disdain, preferring the stage. His career was marked by professional hardships. The brutal financial struggles of the Great Depression forced him to abandon his pure theatrical aspirations to make ends meet in Hollywood. Once there, he faced the ongoing challenge of being heavily typecast. Despite his leading man status on Broadway, he was perpetually relegated to supporting roles as lovable drunks or boisterous Irishmen, a professional sting compounded by his own private off-screen battles with alcoholism. Thomas Mitchell continued to work in television, theater, and film for decades, cementing his legacy as one of the greatest character actors of Hollywood's golden age. He achieved monumental professional success by becoming the very first male actor to win the Triple Crown of acting, securing an Oscar, an Emmy, and a Tony Award throughout his storied career. To modern audiences, he remains universally beloved for his later role as the affable and absent-minded Uncle Billy in Frank Capra's 1946 holiday classic, It's a Wonderful Life. Mitchell passed away in Beverly Hills, California on December 17, 1962, at the age of 70 from peritoneal mesothelioma. His death was followed by a poignant, cinematic aftermath. He passed away in the exact same hospital just 2 days after his close friend and former co-star, Charles Laughton. Mitchell was subsequently cremated at the Chapel of the Pines Crematory, where, per his request, his ashes were quietly placed in a private vault. Barbara O'Neill as Ellen O'Hara. Born on July 17, 1910 in St. Louis, Missouri, the stage-trained actress first brought Ellen O'Hara to life in the 1939 cinematic epic Gone with the Wind. At the age of 28, O'Neill's portrayal of Scarlett O'Hara's gentle and aristocratic mother became a cultural touchstone, offering an enduring depiction of Southern maternal grace and antebellum nobility. Her commanding yet soothing screen presence helped anchor the film's sweeping narrative, creating an indelible character whose moral weight and tragic absence shaped the rest of the story, securing her place as one of early cinema's most iconic matriarchs. Despite the character's traditional, serene, and deeply maternal nature, Barbara O'Neill was an intensely independent and highly educated woman raised by a prominent suffragist mother, and distinctly different from the submissive antebellum archetype she perfected. This contrast became a double-edged sword for her personal and professional journey. Her effortless ability to project older, motherly authority led to severe typecasting in Hollywood. Because she was so remarkably convincing as a matriarch, even playing mother to actors near her own age like Vivien Leigh, who was merely 3 years her junior, studios struggled to envision her as a conventional leading lady. This limitation made it difficult for her to find diverse work, resulting in a frustrating professional hardship where she was continually passed over for romantic leads and faced long gaps in her filmography throughout the 1940s and 1950s. Barbara O'Neill continued to work in film and stage for 2 decades, earning an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress in All This and Heaven 2, 1940, and appearing in classics like I Remember Mama and The Nun's Story. In her personal life, following a brief marriage to director Joshua Logan in the early 1940s, she divorced, never remarried, and chose to live a very private life away from the Hollywood spotlight. O'Neill passed away at her home in Cos Cob, Connecticut on September 3, 1980, at the age of 70 from a heart attack. Her death was followed by a quiet, private mourning period, a stark contrast to the massive cultural footprint of her most famous film, and she was peacefully laid to rest at El Carmelo Cemetery in Pacific Grove, California. Evelyn Keyes as Sue Ellen O'Hara, born on November 20th, 1916 in Port Arthur, Texas, the talented actress brought the resentful middle O'Hara sister to life in the monumental 1939 cinematic epic Gone with the Wind. At the age of 22, Keyes' portrayal of Sue Ellen O'Hara became an indelible part of Hollywood history. Sue Ellen served as the perfect irritable foil to Scarlett O'Hara, brilliantly capturing the bitter, petty rivalries of Southern belles amidst the devastating backdrop of the Civil War. Though she originally auditioned for the lead and viewed Sue Ellen as a minor supporting role, her performance cemented the character's lasting cultural footprint and immortalized Keyes in one of the most successful films ever made. Despite the character's petulant, easily manipulated, and constantly complaining nature, Evelyn Keyes was fiercely independent, outspoken, and intellectually curious in real life, a stark contrast to the frequently jilted Sue Ellen. She was known as a Hollywood rebel who lived unabashedly on her own terms and openly defied the conservative conventions of her era. Professionally, however, her career was marked by intense hurdles and the oppressive reality of the Hollywood studio system. Under contract at Columbia Pictures, she frequently languished in B-movies and faced severe professional retaliation after bravely rebuffing the aggressive sexual advances of notorious studio boss Harry Cohn. Furthermore, she struggled with the double-edged sword of typecasting. She often expressed frustration that her extensive body of work, which included highly acclaimed lead roles in classic film noir, was continually overshadowed by her bit part in Gone with the Wind and the relentless tabloid focus on her high-profile marriages to men like John Huston and Artie Shaw. Evelyn Keyes eventually transitioned away from Hollywood's spotlight, finding a successful second career as an author who penned candid, unvarnished memoirs about the dark realities of the Golden Age studio era. She remained active well into her twilight years, running miles every morning and maintaining her sharp wit. Keyes passed away at an assisted living facility in Montecito, California on July 4, 2008, at the age of 91, following a battle with uterine cancer. Her passing carried a notable aftermath. News of her death was intentionally withheld from the public and press for over a week by her estate's lawyers until her death certificate could be formally filed and secured. Following her cremation, her ashes were divided. A portion was placed in a lantern on display at the Museum of the Gulf Coast, while the rest was buried in a family plot in Waco, Georgia, beneath a tombstone bearing the fitting epitaph, Gone with the Wind. Anne Rutherford as Corinne O'Hara, born on November 2, 1917, in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. The talented actress first established herself in radio and westerns before landing her iconic part. At the age of 21, Rutherford's portrayal of the sweet, optimistic, and fragile younger sister of Scarlett O'Hara became a timeless piece of cinematic history in the 1939 masterpiece, Gone with the Wind. Her character provided a gentle, naive contrast to the fiery personalities around her, contributing to a massive cultural phenomenon that remains one of the most celebrated and globally recognized films of Hollywood's golden age. Despite the character's timid, starry-eyed, and delicate nature, Anne Rutherford was actually remarkably outgoing, sharp-witted, and possessed a shrewd, confident business sense. This contrast played a significant role in her career journey, as her real-life assertiveness allowed her to bravely negotiate her own salary directly with formidable studio moguls like Louis B. Mayer. However, her career was marked by the intense struggle of being heavily typecast as the perennial wholesome teenager, largely due to her simultaneous 12-film run as the girl next door Polly Benedict in the Andy Hardy series. This strict typecasting made it increasingly difficult for her to find mature dramatic work in Hollywood, ultimately leading her to leave MGM as a free agent in an attempt to escape the mold before her film career largely faded out by the 1950s. Anne Rutherford transitioned gracefully into a comfortable retirement, though she occasionally returned to the screen for guest spots, such as playing Suzanne Pleshette's mother on The Bob Newhart Show in the 1970s. She was married twice, most notably to Batman television series producer William Dozier from 1953 until his death in 1991. And she remained a beloved active figure at classic film festivals, where she delighted in answering fan mail. Rutherford passed away at her home in Beverly Hills, California, on June 11, 2012, at the age of 94 from heart failure following declining health. Her passing marked the loss of one of the very last surviving stars of Gone with the Wind, prompting widespread tributes from classic cinema lovers around the world. George Reeves as Brent Tarleton. Born on January 5, 1914 in Woolstock, Iowa, the talented actor first captured audiences' attention as Brent Tarleton in the 1939 cinematic epic Gone with the Wind. At the age of 25, Reeves's portrayal of one of Scarlett O'Hara's dashing red-headed suitors placed him in the very first scene of a film that became a monumental cultural touchstone. Offering a memorable depiction of Southern aristocratic charm and carefree confidence, his performance contributed to the massive success of the masterpiece and permanently cemented his place in film history. Despite the easygoing aristocratic confidence of Brent Tarleton, Reeves's actual career was marked by profound professional frustration and a continuous battle for industry respect. While his career began in one of the most prestigious films of all time, he is most famously remembered for playing the Man of Steel in the 1950s television series Adventures of Superman. This defining role led to severe typecasting. He found it incredibly difficult to secure dramatic roles, as casting directors and audiences could only see him as a children's superhero. Reeves felt trapped and disheartened by the Cape, struggling with the reality that his serious acting aspirations had been entirely eclipsed. When Adventures of Superman faced production pauses and was ultimately put on hold, he was left dealing with financial strain, canceled public appearance tours, and a lack of meaningful new acting opportunities. Reeves attempted to forge a new path in his later years by seeking out directing opportunities and even participating in a wrestling exhibition tour to generate income, but he could not shake the shadow of Superman. His personal life was equally complicated, marked by a long-term, high-profile affair with Toni Mannix, the wife of MGM studio executive Eddie Mannix, and a subsequent troubled engagement to socialite Leonore Lemon. Tragically, George Reeves passed away at his home in Beverly Hills, California, on June 16, 1959, at the age of 45 from a gunshot wound to the head. His death was officially ruled a suicide, but the dubious circumstances ignored physical evidence and conflicting witness testimonies left a notable aftermath of enduring mystery. Decades later, his untimely end remains the subject of widespread conspiracy theories, books, and films, serving as a highly debated and somber conclusion to a Hollywood icon's life. Fred Crane as Stuart Tarleton. Born Herman Frederick Crane on March 22, 1918, in New Orleans, Louisiana, the young actor's big break came entirely by chance. At the age of 20, Crane accompanied his cousin to an audition and ultimately won the role of Stuart Tarleton in the 1939 cinema masterpiece, Gone with the Wind. Sitting on the porch of Tara alongside his twin brother Brent, played by George Reeves and Vivien Leigh's Scarlett O'Hara, Crane was given the tremendous honor of delivering the opening lines of the film. His portrayal of the handsome, war-eager Southern suitor cemented his place in Hollywood history, contributing to a cultural touchstone that remains one of the most celebrated and successful motion pictures ever made. While Stuart Tarleton was a brash, expelled-from-college aristocrat who eagerly romanticized the prospect of war, Fred Crane was in reality a mild-mannered, true gentleman with a deep, lifelong passion for classical music. Crane freely admitted he had never even read Margaret Mitchell's novel before being cast, and viewed himself simply as a small shard in a grand mosaic. Professionally, his acting career proved to be sparse and largely unfulfilling after his famous debut, with him securing mostly minor television roles. He ultimately pivoted his career, finding his true calling as a classical music radio announcer for KFAC in Los Angeles. However, this path also brought hardship. After a 40-year tenure, the station's owners abruptly fired him and several other veteran employees in 1987 during a staff purge. Crane fought back successfully, winning an age discrimination lawsuit against the station to find justice. In his later years, Crane fully embraced his cinematic legacy. He and his fifth wife, Terry Lynn, purchased an 1846 antebellum mansion in Barnesville, Georgia, converting it into the Tarleton Oaks Bed and Breakfast, which prominently featured a Gone with the Wind museum. He frequently attended fan conventions and delighted in sharing stories from the set with visitors. Fred Crane passed away at a hospital near Atlanta, Georgia, on August 21, 2008, at the age of 90, from a pulmonary embolism that developed following surgery for diabetes-related complications. His death marked a significant milestone for classic cinema, as he was the last surviving adult male cast member of Gone with the Wind, and his passing prompted widespread tributes from film historians and devoted fans around the world. Hattie McDaniel as Mammy. Born on June 10, 1893 in Wichita, Kansas, the pioneering entertainer first brought her immense talents to Hollywood in the early 1930s before securing her defining role in Gone with the Wind. At the age of 45, McDaniel's portrayal of Mammy, the fiercely loyal and strong-willed head domestic worker of the O'Hara plantation, became a historic and culturally complex touchstone. Her monumental performance made history, earning her the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress in 1940, and cementing her legacy as the first African-American to ever win an Oscar. Despite the character's subservient, uneducated, and sexless depiction on screen, Hattie McDaniel was the polar opposite in real life. She was a glamorous, elegant, and wealthy woman who hosted lavish parties in her sprawling Los Angeles mansion, as well as a talented singer-songwriter and trailblazing radio star. This stark contrast was overshadowed by the fierce struggles she faced throughout her career. McDaniel was heavily typecast by a systemically racist Hollywood restricted almost entirely to playing maids and domestic workers. She also faced severe backlash from the NAACP and black audiences for perpetuating demeaning racial stereotypes, to which she famously responded that she would rather make $700 a week playing a maid than $7 being one. Beyond screen limitations, she endured blatant real-world segregation, being banned from attending the Atlanta premiere of her own film and being forced to sit at a segregated table at the back of the room during her historic Oscar win. Hattie McDaniel continued to break barriers in her later years, becoming the first black woman to star in a weekly radio program aimed at a general audience with The Beulah Show in 1947, a role she later transitioned to television before her health declined. McDaniel passed away at the hospital of the Motion Picture House in Woodland Hills, California on October 26, 1952, at the age of 59, from breast cancer. Her death was followed by a devastating and highly publicized injustice. Her final wish was to be buried in Hollywood Cemetery, but the owners refused her interment because the graveyard strictly enforced a racial segregation policy at the time. She was buried instead at Rosedale Cemetery. Decades later, her legacy was finally given some of its rightful respect when a pink marble cenotaph was erected in her honor at the renamed Hollywood Forever Cemetery in 1999. though the whereabouts of her historic Oscar plaque, which went missing from Howard University in the late 1960s, remains an unsolved mystery to this day. Oscar Polk as Pork. Born on December 25, 1899 in Marianna, Arkansas, the talented stage actor first brought the character of Pork to life in the monumental 1939 film adaptation of Gone with the Wind. At the age of 39, Polk's portrayal of the O'Hara family's intensely loyal enslaved house servant became a part of cinematic history. While the role reflected the restrictive and problematic racial attitudes of the era, his memorable scenes, such as disclosing the crippling $300 in back property taxes on Tara to Scarlett, cemented the character as a widely recognized figure within a film that left a massive cultural impact on the 20th century. Despite playing a subservient and socially restricted character, Oscar Polk was an accomplished, sophisticated Broadway veteran whose real-life theatrical talents far exceeded the confines of his on-screen persona. This contrast highlighted the significant professional hardships faced by black actors during Hollywood's golden age. Polk found himself severely typecast, often relegated to playing stereotypical servants, elevator operators, and porters, rather than the complex, dignified roles he was capable of executing. This systemic marginalization made it difficult for him to find substantive work in cinema, leading him to rely heavily on his theatrical roots, where he successfully starred in Pulitzer Prize-winning plays like You Can't Take It With You. Polk spent his later years continuing to pursue his passion for the stage, living with his wife, Ivy V. Polk, who had an uncredited extra role in Gone with the Wind, and their son, Oscar Polk Jr. When looking at his status calculated for the year 2026, the actor would have been 126 years old, but his life was tragically cut short during the prime of his career. Polk passed away on January 4, 1949, at the age of 49, after being fatally struck by a taxicab as he stepped off a curb in Times Square, New York City. The aftermath of his sudden death sent a shockwave through the theater community. At the time of the accident, he was scheduled to star in a major role in the Broadway play Leading Lady, a part that was subsequently taken over by a young Ossie Davis. He was laid to rest at Mount Olivet Cemetery in Long Island, leaving behind a lasting, albeit tragically brief, artistic legacy. Butterfly McQueen as Prissy. Born on January 7, 1911, the Tampa, Florida native first brought the squeaky-voiced enslaved maid Prissy to life in the cinematic epic Gone with the Wind, 1939. At the age of 28, McQueen's portrayal delivered one of the most recognizable lines in film history. "I don't know nothing about birthin' babies." Although the character was highly controversial for embodying a negative racial stereotype of a dim-witted and hysterical servant, McQueen's unforgettable performance cemented her place in cinema history, leaving a complex cultural impact that is still widely discussed and analyzed today. Despite the foolish, frantic, and subservient nature of the character she played, Butterfly McQueen was a highly intelligent, proud, and deeply thoughtful woman who was the polar opposite of Prissy. This contrast created an immense professional and personal struggle for her. She detested the demeaning racial stereotypes imposed on African American actors and found the humiliating role of Prissy challenging to accept. Her career was marked by severe typecasting, which bound her to playing foolish maids and made it incredibly difficult to find dignified work in an industry plagued by systemic racism. Adding to the sting of her Hollywood experience, she and the other black cast members were barred from attending the film's premiere in a segregated Atlanta theater. Refusing to continually accept degrading roles, she eventually stepped away from the film industry to support herself with various working-class jobs. Butterfly McQueen lived a very private life, remaining unmarried with no children, and chose to pursue personal fulfillment outside of acting. She dedicated much of her time to community service and returned to school, proudly earning a bachelor's degree in political science from the City College of New York in 1975 at the age of 64. A lifelong freethinker and atheist, she openly challenged religious dogmas and became an honored member of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. McQueen passed away at Augusta Regional Medical Center in Georgia on December 22, 1995, at the age of 84, from severe burns sustained when a kerosene heater malfunctioned and caught fire in her cottage. In a final act of generosity and commitment to science, the notable aftermath of her death included the donation of her body to medical research. Victor Jory as Jonas Wilkerson, born on November 23, 1902, in Dawson City, Yukon, Canada. Jory first brought the spiteful Jonas Wilkerson to life in the 1939 cinematic epic Gone with the Wind. At the age of 36, Jory's portrayal of the brutal and opportunistic overseer of the Tara plantation, who returns as an arrogant carpetbagger, became a powerful emblem of villainy. His performance perfectly captured the exploitation of the Reconstruction era, contributing deeply to the sweeping cultural impact and historical narrative of one of cinema's most enduring masterpieces. Despite playing a cowardly and vindictive antagonist, Victor Jory was a highly disciplined and honorable man in real life, known as a dedicated family man and a former boxing and wrestling champion in the United States Coast Guard. This striking contrast highlighted a major professional struggle throughout his career: intense typecasting. Because of his piercing dark eyes, harsh facial features, and deep resonant voice, Hollywood predominantly relegated him to the roles of sinister heavies and villains. This severely limited his opportunities to secure the romantic or heroic lead roles he deeply desired and was highly trained for as a seasoned stage actor, a restriction that often frustrated his broader artistic ambitions. Victor Jory continued to act prolifically in film, stage, and television for decades, raising two children, John and Jean, with his wife of over 50 years, actress Jean Innes. He took on the starring role of Detective Lieutenant Howard Finucane in the syndicated television police drama Manhunt, which ran from 1959 to 1961 and lent his powerful voice to numerous recordings and narrations. In his later years, he dedicated himself to teaching, serving on the theater faculty at the University of Utah. Jory passed away in Santa Monica, California on February 12, 1982, at the age of 79 from a heart attack. Following his death, his remains were cremated and his legacy in the arts was cemented not only by his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, but also by the Victor Jory Scholarship he endowed for aspiring theater students at the University of Utah, a lasting tribute to his lifelong dedication to the craft. Everett Brown as Big Sam. Born on January 1, 1902 in Smith County, Texas, the actor first brought his character to life in the 1939 cinematic epic Gone with the Wind. At the age of 37, Brown's portrayal of the loyal and kind-hearted enslaved field foreman of Tara became a memorable performance. While the character was largely framed within the restricted racial archetypes of the era, Big Sam's heroic rescue of Scarlett O'Hara during a shantytown attack offered a rare and culturally significant flash of on-screen strength. Though a supporting part, his work defined a character that remains a notable fixture of classic Hollywood history. Unlike the overly accommodating and simplistic caricature he was paid to portray, Everett Brown was a dignified professional whose true capabilities contrasted sharply with the limitations placed upon him. His career was defined by the immense struggle of navigating an intensely prejudiced film industry. He suffered from severe typecasting, routinely relegated to playing minor, stereotypical, and often uncredited roles, such as background slaves or natives in films like 1933's King Kong. The professional sting of this relentless stereotyping and difficulty finding substantial work eventually proved too disheartening. Deeply frustrated by the lack of meaningful roles, Brown abruptly retired from the film business in 1940, stepping away from an industry that refused to recognize his full potential. After nearly a decade away from the screen, Brown returned to Hollywood in 1949 to make just 4 more films. Little was documented about his private life during his hiatus or his final years, reflecting the tragic marginalization of many black pioneers in early cinema. Everett Brown passed away in Los Angeles, California on October 14, 1953, at the age of 51 from causes that remain publicly unrecorded. As a quiet aftermath to his career, he was laid to rest at Evergreen Cemetery in Los Angeles, where he remains remembered as a talented actor whose legacy outlived the systemic barriers of his time. As the red dust of Tara settles once more, we are reminded that while the stars of 1939 have long since departed, their brilliance remains captured in amber forever. These legends did not just play characters, they defined an era of storytelling that still resonates today. Which transformation surprised you the most, or which performance stays with you? Share your favorite memories of this cinematic masterpiece in the comments below, and do not forget to subscribe for more journeys through Hollywood history.